Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Anthony Bartolo, and welcome back to AZ Update. We are at episode 13. And today, joining me today is my co-host, Pumala Schmidt. Pumala, say hi to everybody.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
I stole that, I think, from Ace Ventura. Pumala, how's it going?
It's hot and humid here. Thank you for having me. I'm pretending to be Thomas today without the accent.
No pretending here. We want Pumala Schmidt. We want Exchange Goddess. We want your energy on the show. So awesome to have you on the show with us today. Lots to talk about. But to kick things off in terms of our just beginning banter, Oren Thomas, one of our colleagues, just announced there's a slew of new content coming to both Docs and to Microsoft Learn surrounding Windows Server. And this is exciting news because we've heard the masses and we get the feedback from our audience and from you watching this episode and watching the shows in terms of we need more content on Windows Server, we need help on upskilling, and Oren Thomas and the Windows Server team have orchestrated a slew of content that's coming out. We're going to talk more about this on the next show, but Pumala, I just wanted to take your insight in regards to this as well, because I too come from the on-premises days, and to see more content coming out, not only from the perspective of enabling Windows Server through connections on Azure and vice versa in a hybrid scenario, but even on a standalone implementation. Pumala, what's your take on that?
Well, it's not going away. Windows Server isn't going away. Organizations are still running it. Yes, we've got Azure and we've got our services, but the majority of organizations out there, they're still running it. We still need to support it, and they need to learn how to use the latest versions. They need documentation. They need support. It's critical to upskill the sysadmins, IT administrators, whatever we want to call ourselves nowadays, right? We need the support, and I'm so happy that we are pushing all this stuff out there. It's a great thing.
So then that's just it, right? Make sure that your voice is heard. If there's something that you need documentation on that's not currently there, or upskilling material on, let us know. And definitely our team at Microsoft will go forward and ensure that if the content doesn't exist, we'll get it built. If it does exist, we'll make you aware that where it resides. And even if it does exist, let us know and provide us feedback in terms of how to make that better to help you be empowered, using Thomas's word, to move forward.
Well, I think it's an example of screaming loud. A lot of IT administrators were screaming, "Hey, we don't have enough," and they kept screaming louder and louder and louder, and to the point like, "We're hearing you. We heard it. Here you go." And I expect we're probably going to be releasing more if Oren has anything to say about it, right?
Oh yeah. So, other quick news. Pumala, you wanted to share some quick news about Blob storage.
Oh yeah, Blob storage can support up to 200 terabytes per object size. Like, for real, 200 terabyte file size. Like, I just can't even imagine like what type of data that is. I just keep thinking in my head, what are you doing? Yeah. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you're an IoT person, so yeah.
Well, and that's the multitude of objects capturing information. You can run up 200 terabytes really quickly, but we're talking about one object, storing it as 200 terabytes. I actually like to throw that to the audience that we have in the chat room. If you're joining us on AZ Update, in the chat room itself, what do you think a 200 terabyte object would be? I know in the chat room today we have Paul Jensen, we have Reese, we have Andrew McCollum. Thomas Maurer actually briefly jumped in there really quickly, but we've told him to go back on vacation because he is on vacation this week. But let us know in the chat room, what do you think a 200 terabyte object would look like, or what would it be?
Maybe like a really, really big cat picture.
Well, I was going to say diagnostics for a Tesla. Right? Could be
possibly, yeah.
There's a lot of data being captured out of that, right?
I just keep thinking, wow. But the way we're consuming data now, in a couple years, I think we won't even blink at that. We're just gonna be like, whatever, right? Let's move on to the next size. So it's just seeing it now, and then a few years from now, let's look at what the next file size is going to be, and then we'll gawk at it again.
Oh, it could be even the imagery. I know when we share images captured from our phones to all the social media platforms. Right now they're smaller size, but the resolution may not be as good. Maybe we're going to come down to the path where you're having these 4K or even 8K images and videos being stored on social, and it would be the norm, right? And so that we talk about the 200 terabyte objects today, which in future could be, 200 terabytes, that's nothing, right?
Yeah, that's just the photo I took with my kids.
Right, exactly. It's a possibility. So let's continue on with the news.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I said, go ahead.
I was going to say, let's continue on with the news. I apologize for cutting you off there. So our first news item, we've been talking about this for the last couple of shows in terms of the updates that are occurring with Azure Site Recovery. Now, Azure Site Recovery has the ability to do replication of private links. So if you watched the previous episode of our show, we talked about private link enablement and the fact that I no longer have to have my resources publicly addressed in order for site recovery to capture said information. And so now in terms of this access of private links, now with site recovery, I can actually replicate everything that's inside of that private link to be, if a disaster should occur, it will be able to replicate that in cloud and switch over in cloud and still have the same attributes in terms of governed access and who has access to those resources under the private link. So it doesn't make the private link public in a replicated scenario. All it does is it now retrieves the information from the private link, stores it up in the cloud. The same attributes the private links would have in terms of disaster recovery would stay intact. And so those same rules will allow for the safe, governed implementation of that data being accessed securely through that private link in a disaster scenario.
Awesome.
And then, Puma, I think you're up next.
So, yes, big news this week with one of our partners, CITRIX. So we always had a partnership with CITRIX, but now we've deepened that relationship. So I don't want to say passionate, but I used to play a CITRIX administrator way back in the previous life. So seeing this, I'm like, wow, this is really great, especially now during COVID or the pandemic, right? Organizations are finding that they need to be more agile. They pretty much, everyone's working from home, and they're finding out that their current infrastructure and their current environment isn't, let's say, ready to go. So for us, deepening our relationship with Citrix, we're pretty much giving our customers and the community out there more options, giving them the ability to really be agile. So there's three key points to this deepening relationship. So it's about agility, right? Being able to really support our customers out there, the consumers, the businesses, so that they can really adapt to the changing environment, having to work from home, being able to supply resources to their users anywhere, regardless of where they're working at. But it's also about meeting the demands as well, right? Growing. So their business, some businesses are growing. So we've got to be able to supply those resources to the users in a way that can meet the demand of the business. And then it's about deepening the relationship. Like I said before, we've always had a relationship with Citrix, but now this is even bigger. It's really, we're taking that opportunity with the customers and saying, hey, you have this existing environment already. You're running, NetScaler, you're running, whatever Citrix applications, but now you've grown bigger and you are at home, people are working at home and you need to scale. So now we're taking that opportunity with Azure and saying, okay, you can scale out, right? You can, it's the ability to also use Windows Virtual Desktop. It's always a tongue twister for me to say. But yeah, we're really deepening our relationships with those applications, but also giving them the ability to still use whatever they have on premises to transition to the cloud. We're not saying, hey, whatever you have here, you can't use anymore. No, you can still use all those existing resources, and they're going to get better. For instance, Teams integration into Citrix. Now, in my former life, I used to manage Skype for Business, and Skype for Business in Citrix was just, for those of, Citrix admins, yeah, it wasn't the greatest, right? But now the integration in the Teams, I'm so excited to see how that's going to play. I mean, I'm already hearing it's already great, but it's going to get better. So with this deepening relationship, all those existing applications that traditionally enterprises use, It's going to get better, it's going to get quicker, and it's going to be more efficient. And something that I read at the very bottom of this news announcement that I thought was kind of fun, interesting to see here. It says, in addition, Citrix will use Azure and Microsoft 365 across their operations to accelerate innovation, enhance productivity. I think that's pretty cool. So now, Citrix is going to be full head on using Microsoft 365. So they're actually going to feel what their customers are feeling, right? They're going to see that experience. They're going to feel it, which means that that innovation, I guess innovation, productivity, they're going to feel it, and they're going to be like, "What? We could make this better." It's sort of like us when we say dog fooding. If we're using the software that our customers are using, we're going to feel that pain, and we're going to want to make it better.
So really quickly, because it's come up in the chat room, Reese has brought it forward. How is this offering correlating with the Windows Virtual Desktop offering that Microsoft has?
So it's actually going to make it better. So if customers want to use Windows Virtual Desktop natively, yes, they can. But if they're already using Citrix, it'll give them an opportunity to basically choose from an option. And I'm going to do shameless promoting here. I have a 3 p.m. live stream that I'm streaming with CTP, Citrix CTPs, about 3 of them. And we're going to talk about this deepening relationship and how that's actually going to affect Windows Virtual Desktop and all the different Citrix applications. Because I honestly, I'm curious myself, since they are the ones actually working in the field with our customers and what their thoughts on it are.
Perfect. So we'll see you at 3 p.m. Let's move on with the news. Next up is a segment that you recorded with the team from the Azure Security Center. I believe it's Yuri, that you'll be having a conversation in terms of what's new with Azure Security Center.
Hey guys, this is Pumla, your roaming reporter. And today I have
producer Pierre is queuing that up as we speak.
From our CXC team on the Azure Security Center team. Yuri, do you want to tell me? Hey, we're roaming, okay?
Yes.
During COVID times, I'm the roaming reporter. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to talk a little bit about Azure Security Center. And for those that don't really know about our product or have never heard of it, can you kind of give me the 30-second summary of what Azure Security Center is?
No, that's a good challenge. 30 seconds for Azure Security Center.
You can be a little bit over. I won't come after you.
All right. Well, so every resources that you provision in Azure, VM, storage, they need to have secure posture in place, right? In other words, you need to understand which areas you need to improve the secure posture, applies secure recommendations, and that's one area that Security Center works is to enhance your secure posture for those workloads. On top of that, we also have threat protection for those workloads so that you can understand if there are threat actors trying to hack into your system or trying to compromise your system. So we have threat protection for VMs, for storage accounts, and other workloads in Azure as well.
So it's sort of like AV with threat protection. It's sort of an all-in-one type of product.
Well, we do integrate with Azure Anti-Malware as well. Okay. So it's integrated with many other solutions like Defender ATP. We integrate with that. Our really good analytics for threat detection is based on our PaaS threat detection. For example, okay. Azure Key Vault, Azure Storage, containers, we do have native threat detection for those.
Okay, well, since this is AZ Update, and we like to talk about the latest and greatest updates available for the Azure services that we have, what's hot off the presses that you can talk about without us signing an NDA and all our millions of friends out there watching us?
So around 1 year ago, we released threat detection for storage account, particularly for a Blob. And this week we are releasing for support for Azure Files and Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 API. So now you're gonna have threat detection for those workloads as well. And you're gonna still see potential alerts being triggered that will show up in the Secure Alerts dashboard in Security Center. So part of the same bundle, part of threat detection for storage, now just extending the support for Azure Files as well. So that's one big announcement. The other one is something that we announced last month, so it's still pretty hot because many customers are not aware. We do have the capability to query the secure score using API. And why this is a big deal? Because with this API call to obtain the secure score, you can build your own report, your progress report, so that you can present to upper management and show how you are making progress in improving your secure posture. That's great. Now you have this capability available as well. And the last one, last but not least, certainly, is the alert suppression. A lot of customers over the past years, they said, well, I'm receiving some alerts here that to my environment, this is a false positive. So I would like to suppress. I don't want to have all that noise. Can I suppress those alerts based on the source IP of the machine that is attacking? Sometimes it's because the organization has a red team. They start pen test the resources. So they are expecting to have those alerts because it's coming from the red team. So they are able to use this feature to suppress alerts.
Okay. Yeah, because having worked in an enterprise before, a lot of times those alerts become white noise, and then you end up ignoring them. So
Yep.
that's great that we can actually suppress that. So all these new features that we just announced, can they be enabled through Azure policies, or is it something that we can't control through policy yet?
Not really, because the alert suppression, for example, you do that on the ASC dashboard. It's not something that you deploy via policy. You deploy via the security center dashboard. The same thing for the security API. What you can do with the security API, you can create automations. You can use logic apps to, for example, schedule once a day to query and save that result in a log analytics workspace. As a matter of fact, we do have a bunch of examples of how to do that in our GitHub repository. We publish there all those samples.
Well, we are just out of time. Thank you so much, Yuri, for joining me today and just giving us the hot off the presses news for Azure Security Center. And back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you, Bumala and Yuri, for that great segment. Continuing on with the news, Microsoft has now announced the ability to allow for public access to Azure storage accounts, specifically Blob access, to accounts that do not require authentication. So I've seen scenarios where customers are creating their own kiosks, and they're using Blob storage to house all the information for said kiosks. So these are dummy terminals that could be in your mall that are capturing surveys, and they are, storing their information to a Blob storage. So Microsoft is now allowing for those individuals that are creating these type of solutions to allow or disallow access via authentication, whether it be Azure AD or insert authentication here, for the ability to make available said Blob storage with or without authentication. Next up, back to Pumala.
Okay, so we have got a preview going on for Power BI, Azure Maps right now. Azure Maps for Power BI Visual is now in preview. So let's go here. What this means is, so Power BI, we all know it's this powerful analysis visualization tool, right? Charts and graphs. Everybody loves charts and graphs. But now we can take the power of charts and graphs and put that into maps. So with this initial release, with the preview, you can do a bubble layer, you can do a 3D layer. So the bubble layer is basically taking your data and representing it in scaled circles. And then you have the 3D bar chart layer, which I actually kind of like. Lots of different colors there. But and then we have the reference layer. This is basically an overlay of an additional data layer, which gives your maps a little bit more context to it. And then you can also do custom tile layering as well. So sort of like the way the weather maps work. And then real-time traffic overlay. This gives you the ability to see how traffic congestion or lack of congestion happens to be with your data. And so since it's in preview, go out and try it and see how you like it, and then definitely give us feedback back on our feedback site.
So continuing on with the news, we're now going to jump into events. And next week is a big event occurring. It is Microsoft Inspire. It's the ability now to go forward and check out what's been happening in the world of Microsoft for those that are adapting the services made available on Azure. Microsoft Inspire is a great representation of Microsoft partners and their works and what they're trying to put forth and to enable people through services. I know that a lot of the great speakers that will be there. Of course, Satya will be there. Judson and others will also be presenting. Near and dear to my heart, there's a team here out in Halton region by the name of Redbit Dev and Mark Artiega and team have been working with an organization called Second Harvest that goes around and collects food from supermarkets before they expire to give back to the food banks. And they've actually been recognized, and they'll be showcasing their solution at Inspire and other solutions that are out there, whether they be for nonprofit or for public organizations and private organizations. It's a great celebration of all the solutions made available on the Azure platform. Next up for events, we have Sarah Lean. Our colleague Sarah Lean will be doing a talk on Walk Through Azure with the user group that's based out in Europe that they're going to be looking at in regards to where do you get started and what are the resources made available when you're looking at your cloud computing adventure to take hold amidst your organization or for the organization that you support. So what Sarah will be doing, she'll go through the entry stages in terms of how do you set up a VM, how do you manage your implementation, how do you set up other resources. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of individuals that are still, at the fundamental stage, and that's awesome. Learning it should be a lifelong thing when you're moving forward in terms of any technology adoption. So definitely, excited to see this being shared out there. The meetup is made available, and we'll share the URLs later. We'll share the URL later today as well. And then Pumla, did you want to talk about the stream that you'll be sharing at 3:00 again today?
It's basically my water cooler stream that I do Wednesdays and Fridays with the community. It's myself, and I select people from the community, and we join and we talk about a technical topic, right? And with the CITRIX announcement, I figured this would be a great opportunity to pull in a different bunch of CTPs together and just talk about this announcement and see how it's going to affect their community and their customers. And
you have three representing Citrix. And they'll be talking about the announcement of the partnership between Microsoft and Citrix.
Yep, and we're just, it's a very casual conversation. I like to hear what the community is saying, and how what their ideas are for this new partnership, and how they're going to take this expanded approach, and make their customers' lives better. So it's always it's fun, and it's a Friday afternoon, so feel free to join. And since it is towards happy hour time, some of us, will bring some beverages along too.
Excellent. And I know we're getting the URL staged so that it can be shared with everybody. I know a lot of people have been asking for it in the chat. If we can't get it there, we'll get it up onto the blog. The blog for AZ Update is on IT Ops Talk. To get there, it's itopstalk.com. If you look at our latest post, we do a post every Friday that recaps everything in the show. And if we can't get it out to you sooner, we'll put it into the blog for everybody to gain access to it for today's stream.
Yeah, it's also you can also look at the current status YouTube channel as well. But I'll also be tweeting out the link.
And you can search it up on YouTube, right? The current status.
Yep, the current status. Yes.
Let's move along. Next up is our Microsoft Learn module of the week. Last week, we talked about the AZ104 instruction set that's made available, or the learning path that's made available, the prerequisites for Azure administrators. Now we're going to take it into the next step. And Pumla, this is something that's near and dear to your heart, managing identities and governance in Azure. So it's a great collection. This is a learning path. It's a great collection of modules that are made available that specifically target identity protection as well as governance. So just-in-time configuration and availability of resources made available in an Azure subscription, all in the module itself. What I love about this is that it furthers on your journey. If you're in the midst of doing your AZ104 certification, I'm actually studying for this right now myself. This is a great way, if you're like me and like to do things hands-on, to understand concepts. This free solution available, and again, the URL itself, and now to get to it, is on itopstock.com. We'll highlight to you in terms of what you need to learn specific to managing identities and governance in order to pass your AZ-104.
Yeah, I'm actually excited to do some of these new modules. Like you said, I love governance. I feel everyone should have some sort of governance going into any type of application system. You just need to nowadays. There's just no ifs, ands, buts about it.
And that's just it, right? In this day and age of cloud adoption, it's not just about hardware that you're deploying anymore. You have to ensure that because the fact that it's so seamless in terms of the resources that are created, that you have those guardrails to ensure, people don't build on costs that are not needed, and something that's specific for an organization's need, as opposed to, I want to try out this new compute power to consume my 200 terabyte object in minutes, right? May not be in the best interest of the company, but it's what governance is all about.
Yeah, I mean, just think if you allowed your developers or anyone to create multiple 200 terabyte file objects, and I'm only going to imagine the compute resources behind that. I mean, that's got to be a lot of money, right? So putting those guardrails, you're going to save yourself some money, and you're going to save yourself, a headache. But also, you're going to protect yourself. I mean, there was a major internet incident this week, with a very popular social media platform, right? I'm sure they had governance, but this is where you got to take a look at your governance plan and see exactly where the crack was and hardening it, right? So with this module, it's giving everybody kind of that primer to say, okay, I'm in the cloud. Here's my existing environment. I'm going to learn about the new stuff. And maybe I need to harden it in these areas, because nobody wants to be the headline news that, oh, there was a breach that happened.
So we've come to the end of today's show. Phoummala, thank you very much for coming on to co-host today. If people want to get a hold of you on the socials, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
I'm always on Twitter. You can find me at Exchange Goddess, or on LinkedIn. So I'm always there. I'm usually talking about food, lots of food, and tech, and lobsters. So if you got a lobster for me, send it my way.
And with us, as always, behind the scenes is producer Pierre, and he can be followed at Wired Canuck. And you can follow me on Twitter at Wireless Life. Thank you, everybody, for joining today's show. Thank you to Reese, to Paul Jensen, to Andrew McCollin, and all those that are participating in the chat room. Be sure to make your voices heard. We love to hear your feedback in the chat room of everything that we're talking about today, which usually makes up into the next show or the next episode the following week. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.